This is not going to be your typical change your life in 90 days video because transformation has very little to do with time and everything to do with the factors that actually determine how fully you can embody the change that you're wanting in the first place. So if you want to do the work to become the person who you're meant to be in this world, then let's skip the pep talk and let's just get to the real talk. As someone who has shifted into and out of countless identities and timelines in this last couple of years to find my authentic self and purpose, as well as now help people with transformation physically, emotionally, and spiritually, what I've seen and what I know to be true now is that it can be really hard to make change last because sometimes we get caught up on the wrong things. And this is why I want to make this video and talk to you about these two factors, because this is what I wish I knew sooner on my own transformation journey, and I want to share this with you so that you can feel like you have some guidance, some direction, and when you actually go to make changes and put that effort in, it'll feel so much easier. So the first thing that I want to talk to you about is this misconception of having to completely get rid of your old self in order to accomplish and achieve a transformation. Now, while it's true that there are behaviors, habits, traits, and certain patterns that your old self and your current self are clinging onto right now that perhaps you've already realized don't serve you, and so you're trying to shed those in order to move towards this version of you who has the dream life or shows up in the way that you want and feels more aligned for you. And while that is true that this old, younger, or current self is carrying these things, you have to recognize that these parts of you are carrying these behaviors and patterns for a reason, and oftentimes it's for protection. Your inner parts have so much wisdom because they are a part of you that makes up your whole, and the whole of you is extremely intelligent and adaptable. And so realizing that these younger parts, they did what they had to do to survive. We can actually send so much love and compassion for these patterns that no longer serve us. And when we can do that, we actually honor them, we acknowledge them, and we pave a path forward for us to be able to bring these parts with us into the future. Because here's the thing, what I see so often and what I've experienced too and didn't realize for the longest time was that when I was making changes, when I thought I was making really big changes and I was doing it successfully, what I was actually doing was escaping my younger self, the parts of myself that I couldn't find love and acceptance for. Even though on the surface it looked like I was making these huge jumps and huge changes, I was actually creating an even further divide between who I was and who I wanted to be. They were not the same person still, because I was isolating and repressing these other parts of myself that I did not want to be anymore. So if you, especially my girlies who have a fear of abandonment, this is for you. This is so important to take all parts of you along for the ride, because when we try to create change without bringing our entire selves along, it further triggers and activates that fear of abandonment, and somewhere down the road it's going to come back around and cause huge problems for you. And we're going to talk about that in the second point. So what I really want to emphasize here is your past self wants to come with you. She doesn't want to be forgotten about, and she doesn't want to be thrown away. So how can you actually find the love for her and bring her along for the ride with you? If you're changing because you don't love this version of you who you are now, what can also happen is that when you make that change, it might appear great on the surface, and then maybe months down the road, even a year, 2 years down the road, this disconnect is going to catch up to you. And oftentimes what it is experienced as is through burnout. I actually went through a really intense period of burnout last year, and it was crazy how burnout can actually creep up on you, and sometimes you don't even know that you're experiencing it or why you're experiencing it until you really do the work to realize that, for me, the situation that I created for myself, I felt trapped and I felt like I could not escape. And it was because these younger parts of myself were just clinging on for dear life, feeling really threatened and feeling like they could not exist in my new reality. So they plateaued my life. I kid you not. It was incredible the amount of power that these parts of myself had. Everything kind of grinded to a halt in my business, in my relationships, and created all kinds of havoc in my life. And I say this with so much compassion for them because I now understand how I created that situation. And knowing that now, I want you to avoid that or experience less of that in your own life. So really taking the time to connect with your younger self, connect with all parts of yourself, not just your younger self, and creating the space for them to all exist and all feel safe to come with you. It's going to actually help you reduce burnout as well, because then you're going to be making choices that are in hopefully in alignment with and in agreement with all of the different parts of you, with all of their different feelings and opinions and dreams and desires and fears. So what people don't realize is that burnout is actually a huge sign that we're not listening to our bodies and we're not listening to the parts of ourselves that are resisting transformation. And we pushed ahead anyway. And the second piece that is so important about getting through to lasting transformation is really understanding what you are signing up for before you go and do it. If you know that you're meant for big things and you are really determined to get there as fast as you can, this is probably the last thing that you want to hear. And I understand, because I've been there too. I used to be that person who would just rush headfirst, jump headfirst into transformation. And this is a really difficult position to be in, because you're essentially only seeing the good things and deluding yourself into thinking that the reality that you're creating for yourself is so much easier and so much more comfortable and so much better than where you currently are, without actually considering what challenges and difficulties you're going to face along the way. When you understand what it's going to take for you to become this version of you, you're so much less likely to give up when things get hard, because you expected it. You saw it, you anticipated it before it happened, and so hopefully you were a little more prepared for it. It doesn't make it easy. We can't anticipate everything that's going to happen, all of the pains, the challenges, the struggles that we'll go through the embodiment process, but it's going to help us feel a little bit more prepared. It's kind of like when you're in a committed relationship, right? So you're committing to all of the person, not just the good parts. And that's what makes a committed relationship work. After the honeymoon phase, then you start to see like who this person really is. And then you get the full picture of, is this someone that I can commit to? And so when it comes to actually making transformation and change in your life, look past the honeymoon phase. See like, okay, what is it that I'm actually dealing with here? And am I willing to do that? Am I willing to face these discomforts? How badly do I want this? And here's the thing. You don't have to do anything. This is one of the affirmations that I've been telling myself lately when my inner parts feel like really resistant to something that I want. Like part of myself wants to do and part of myself is like, wait, why do we want that again? So it can be helpful to just say, you don't have to do anything. Just as a reminder that you always have a choice in what you do. And there's no shame around if you are being realistic and holding your image of what you want, you're going to get there. Being realistic just means that you're grounded and you're in tune with your capacity, you know yourself well enough, and you're honest enough with yourself to know that we can't always say yes to everything, and that's totally okay. And so at this point, if you're thinking, all right, I still want to move forward with this change, once you know that you want to make change, it's important to get clear on what type of change. So this is still in the thread of like being honest with yourself. There's two major categories of change, right? We have like habits-based change, and then we have feelings-based change. So habit-based change is the more superficial type changes, like changing the things that you do on a daily basis, making minor shifts here and there. And for some people, that's really challenging. Depending on your situation, depending on what type of change it is, you might only have time, energy, resources, and space to do small shifts like that, and that's perfect. If that's where you want to start, amazing. Then we also have feelings-based changes. So these are typically the more deeper level transformation type changes, where it's actually something that's coming from within you. And when you can embody, it's the embodied transformation. When you're feeling in your body, what is it like to be this version of myself, my highest self, or when I'm doing XYZ, what does it actually feel like in my body, and how do I get there? So those are feelings-based changes. And when we do it from a place of what does this feel like to be her, then it naturally, when our energetic vibration actually matches that image, then it becomes actually natural to have habits-based changes in accordance with that. It just happens naturally. So an example I have for you with that is my own journey with removing refined sugar from my diet. As I sit here and film this now, I am on my 3rd year of not having refined sugars in my diet. And this is crazy to me, to my old self, because I used to have such a sweet tooth when it came to chocolate and baked goods and things like that. I never thought that it would be something that I could just walk past in a grocery store or in a restaurant and just not even care about it at all. And it was extremely challenging to get here. In the beginning, I would do a challenge called Whole30. If you haven't heard of it, it's just a whole food based diet for 30 days. No refined sugars is part of that diet. So that was the first time that I actually experimented with removing sugar from my diet. And I actually did Whole30 4 times, on and off, through about 3 years, just because not only for the refined sugar aspect. The 5th time that I did Whole30, it just stuck. I was also doing a lot of inner work at the same time to really raise my self-worth. And when I was an energetic match for higher self-worth, then I cared more about my body and how I felt. And when I cared more about my body, I wanted to put things in my body that helped me feel good and helped me feel better. And at the same time, when I did Whole30 for the 5th time, that's when I realized, oh, part of what makes me feel really good about this challenge is not having refined sugar. I finally have mental clarity. I was in a fog before I started to do it. And when that clicked in my body and in my mind, I realized, oh, this feeling, I can create this by making a choice not to have refined sugar. And so it was a combination of raising my vibration to be an energetic match for the image that I wanted, which was just to be healthier and to feel more like myself. And then in addition to the feeling in my body of, oh, there's an actual felt sensation of change, which is the brain fog lifted. I had mental clarity. I felt actual sensations of feeling good in my body. It was like, once that all happened, it was so easy to make the mental choice of, maybe I won't have refined sugar anymore. And I didn't intend on actually keeping that as a lifestyle, like a permanent lifestyle choice. I actually was saying to myself, let's see how long we can go. And then it just never stopped. So that's actually how it happened. It was unintentional, which is actually crazy to say, considering just a year before that I was struggling on the yo-yo of the sugar addiction that so many people are. So that's what I mean by the difference between a habits-based change versus a feelings-based change. And argument could be made that a habits-based change could turn into a feelings-based change, like it did with me and Whole30, like if you do it enough times, eventually you're going to something's going to shift, and then you can make that connection. Although it is easier to always incorporate some form of self-development, like inner work, to raise your vibration while you are moving towards the change that you desire. And I'll link my self-worth video at the end of this video so you can receive that guidance as well if that's something that you're working on. And then once you're more clear on which type of change you're trying to make, neither is better than the other. Just being honest with yourself is what's important. Lasting change is not determined by the amount of time it takes, nor by your motivation, because that fluctuates, but actually by your consistency. So it's funny that the people who are the most successful are just the ones who just didn't give up when everybody else did. And there's so many examples of people like this, like Lady Gaga, Walt Disney, Steven Spielberg, Thomas Edison, so many people who encountered many failures over time and went through a lot of rejection, a lot of struggle in order to become really successful. And so asking yourself now, what are you willing to go through to get there? What are you willing to face in order to become this version of you? And what's even more important to ask is, can you still uphold this image of yourself when you fail or when you experience a setback? How does that affect your perception of yourself in relation to the image that you're creating, right? Because it's so easy. Why people give up, that I've seen, why I've given up in the past sometimes, is because I wasn't able to hold the discomfort of that failure, that rejection, that disappointment that came with, or the perception of those things happening was too much for me to handle in my nervous system. It was so dysregulating to go through that I just gave up. I couldn't keep going until I learned the tools to be able to regulate myself, to comfort myself, to soothe myself, to attune to these discomforts so that I could move through any type of growth discomfort that I do now and hold to that version of myself that I want to be, because I can take all parts of myself with me, I can comfort them, I can be with them, and I don't abandon myself in the process. So learning from your failures and adjustments is so important, because pain, struggle, challenge is inevitable. No matter what type of transformation you're experiencing, the habits-based ones, the feelings-based one, big pivots in life, small pivots in life, body-based changes, emotional healing, limiting beliefs reframing, all of spiritual growth, every type of change is going to involve some form of discomfort. And what can help, in addition to having tools that actually help you in your body to regulate, is having the mindset of that these pains and struggles have something to teach you. They're not here to sabotage you. They're not here to reinforce your belief that you don't deserve it. They're actually here to help you become the transformation. They're opportunities for you to embody even more of what you are trying to become. So if you find it challenging to see it this way and you're struggling with the discomfort that change demands of you, then I encourage you to listen to my free audio training. There's 3 secrets to embodied breakthroughs and lasting transformation. I will link that down in the description box below. One thing that I really want to emphasize for you is that it's just important to begin now. To sit with what's here. Sit with what you've received in this video before you go click off to somewhere else and go back into your normal life. Just before moving on to the next thing, just pause and take this in. Do the reflection, feel into your body. What do you want to create? Get clear on that change. What does it really mean to commit to making a transformation? What does that look like for you? What does that feel like for you? What type of change are you really ready to make? And how can you make that as consistent as possible? How can you bring your old self with you along for the ride. I'm so excited to hear about what shifts happened for you after watching this, and I will see you in the next video.